All right, one last look at your traffic and weather for your ride in on this Thursday morning. Only one accident that I'm seeing right now. That's at Sunset Boulevard and I-26. Be careful as you're making your way through there on your way in this morning. Everything else looking relatively okay in and around town. Of course, got your usual construction in the normal places around the city. Today's high going to get up to 60, so a little bit cooler than it was yesterday. Going to be 55 tomorrow with plenty of sunshine. Currently 44 here in downtown Columbia on the game. Oh, 9 o'clock on your Thursday morning. Welcome in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head back after my day off yesterday alongside Jack Veltri. Jack, sounds like everything went okay yesterday. Nothing burned to the ground, so I guess y'all did all right while I wasn't here.
We had a good show yesterday. Thank you to Elijah Campbell and Terry Ford for coming in here to talk with me, and it was very fun. Had a lot of different conversations about a lot of different things going on, Gamecocks, professional, college, you name it. We talked about it. It was a lot of fun, and glad to have you back in here, pal.
Well, thank you. I spent most of yesterday morning sitting in the worst traffic imaginable in Atlanta, so that made the drive-in this morning not as bad, and there was some traffic that I got into, but when you sit in just crawling traffic in Atlanta for 2 hours, it makes Columbia not seem that bad.
Yeah, Atlanta traffic, I could speak to it, man. It is, I'll say this. When we went there for media days for the football event in July or whatever it was, I don't think the traffic was too terrible getting out of Atlanta. Like, I probably left Atlanta that day probably around like 5:30, 6 o'clock. And honestly, like, I sat in a little bit of traffic, but as bad as it's made out to be, I don't think it was that terrible.
It's the morning rush that's the worst part, because I just full transparency, I was gone for an appointment. I wasn't there just hanging out, and I had to be at my appointment by 8:30. And I left my parents' house a little after 6:30, and my parents live roughly about 35 miles from downtown Atlanta, and it took me almost 2 hours to give context. And then you ever like have a place that you've been to a lot of times, but you don't go for a while, and they like start changing things around, then you're completely lost.
Oh yeah.
That's what I ran into yesterday. Again, this is a hospital that I've been at a million times before, tons of doctor's appointments, all that kind of stuff. Well, they've been doing construction. So I pull in at about 8:25 from 8:30 appointment. I'm thinking, okay, perfect. I'm parked right by the door. It'll take me all of 2 minutes to go down this hallway, get to where I need to go, and I'm in good shape. So then I go to enter the facility, and it's blocked off because they're doing construction. So I got to go to the other parking deck, take that elevator down to the street level to go in through the cafeteria, because that's apparently the alternate entrance. I do that. I go through the cafeteria. I go to the normal elevator that I usually take. Well, you can't get off on the first floor there because of construction. So I have to go to the other building that's connected to take that elevator to the first floor to go where I always enter this certain clinic that I'm supposed to go to, only to find out it's blocked off too. So then I have to go back. I have to ask somebody like, hey, I'm looking for this doctor. Where do I need to go? Turns out it's back by the elevators that I just got off of, all the way on the other side.
Of course.
So it took me like 20 minutes to find where I needed to go. Thankfully, they're like, yeah, everybody's getting lost now. It's okay. So I wasn't like late or anything, but that was my experience yesterday morning of why I wasn't here.
Yeah, it was rather chill here compared to that. So, but hey, you made it back in one piece, and you're here for another show. So
that's right, and that's grounds to celebrate for this morning with our Sandstorm Pick Me Up.
Time to get high hyped? Here's your 9 a.m. Sandstorm, sponsored by George Sink Injury Lawyers. Just call all nines.
It is time for your 9 a.m. Sandstorm Pick-Me-Up, brought to you by South Carolina's largest injury law firm, George Sink Injury Lawyers. If you've been hurt in the car or at work, call George Sink now at 803 all nines. Of course, yesterday, one of the things I know you guys talked a lot about was the Devontae Miles situation. You're the one that alerted me to this on Tuesday. I just finished driving to my parents' house in Georgia, and like the first notification I get on my phone is you telling me about Devontae Miles getting arrested. I'm like, okay, well, that's great. And again, I know you guys really dove into this a lot yesterday, but I wanted to give a quick take on it if I could. For one, this is an unfortunate situation. Because we focus on the football element of it mainly because that's our jobs, but there's a human element to this too, and I hope this isn't something that, derails Devontae Miles' life and leads him down a path of anything bad or anything like that. Is his time here at South Carolina as a football player over? Likely. Is his college football career over? Maybe. But again, I hope this is just kind of a bump in the road and he gets things back on track, and this isn't something that, again, kind of leads him down a bad path in life, because nobody wants that, right? Like we root for these guys, want these guys to be successful, whether that be in football or in life. And again, I hope this isn't something that's starting bad things happening for Devontae Miles in his life. You know what I mean?
Well, you got to remember, he also got suspended in October for the Oklahoma game by Shane Beamer. He was one of those three players, including Brian Rowe,
right,
who got suspended. So,
and we don't know the full context of what happened there.
No, but it was something for apparently, quote, selfish reasons.
Yeah,
so,
and that could be related to this. It could not be. We have no idea.
Yeah, but I think all that to be said, that included with what happened the other day. I mean, 20 bags of weed, dude.
It's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. And a firearm found in the car.
Yep.
Now, I mentioned this to Elijah yesterday. We don't know if it was registered to him or if he has a license to carry. So don't know that stuff yet. You hope he does have a license to carry and that it's not just a random gun in his car, because that's not.
That can lead to a lot more legal issues.
Yeah, we're talking probably like jail at that point.
Right.
So all that to be said, I think you're probably looking at a situation here where, look, he's probably gonna have to get cut. I would be shocked if he's still on the team.
Yeah.
When you begin the season, there's just, I don't know. It's just not a good look. You want to give these guys as many chances as you can, but when you're screwing up like that and it's 20 bags of weed found in the car, it's just not, and a firearm, not a good look.
Yeah, and per your story right now, we haven't had any new update on this. He's only being charged with possession with intent to distribute. When it comes to the marijuana, again, we'll see what happens with the gun stuff, whether that was registered to him or not. And again, I'm not excusing any of this. What he did was bad and was rightfully, arrested for it. But again, hopefully this is a lesson in life that he learns from and corrects things going forward. But yeah, his football career here at Carolina is effectively over. And, I feel like this is a situation where you do have to make an example out of someone. And again, for this situation, it's very easy. When you're getting arrested, that is grounds to be removed from a football team. And we need to give Beamer a lot of credit, because we're going into the 6th year here, and there are very few instances of these kind of things happening. You mentioned Devontae Miles among a couple other players that did serve a short suspension last year. Would have been early 2023 when you had a couple of those new, at the time, signees that got kicked off the team. There was a thing with a weapon on campus there with a couple of those guys. So Beamer's been pretty swift in his action with this kind of stuff, and I think that contributes to running a tight ship, right? Where nobody in that facility over there thinks they can get away with stuff, and they know if they screw up, there's grounds for them to get kicked off the team. And look, at the end of the day, the results on the field, the wins and losses are going to determine what the Beamer area is, how long he stays here, and all that kind of stuff. But he does deserve credit for keeping these guys mainly on the straight and narrow, and now, again, over half a decade as the head coach here.
Yeah, the guy runs a good program. It's as simple as that. The guys like playing for him, but I think they also know there are consequences for your actions. And look, if if this were Miles' first instance of getting in trouble with the team or the law, whatever, if he didn't get suspended by Beamer back in just a few months ago, quite honestly, like only 4 or 5 months ago, I think maybe, I don't think that necessarily means he's going to be back. You probably still cut him, to be honest.
For an offense this egregious.
Yeah, probably getting cut either way. But I think it's just I think it's a no-brainer now at this point, just because you already suspended him once and now he's getting in trouble with the law. It seems to me that whatever happened the first time, he hasn't really learned his lesson in general, and now he's probably going to pay the price for it.
Yeah, and again, I know we can kind of roll our eyes when coaches talk about wanting to build, good men and to be great football players and be great people and all that kind of stuff. But there is value in that, and that is something you can legitimately sell when you're sitting in the homes of these 16, 17-year-old kids talking to their parents like, hey, I want to make sure that your son is set up for success, whether it be on the football field or elsewhere in his life, by the culture that we have here in South Carolina. Take it from somebody that went to the University of Georgia, and every other week I'm having to read about one of their players getting arrested for going 130 miles an hour in Athens or driving recklessly in some other way or something along those lines. And look, Kirby Smart wins, national champion in the playoff pretty much every single year. That's not going to run him out of town by any means, but it is just disheartening to continue to read that about that program. And thankfully, outside of rare instances like this, we haven't had to deal with that, knock on wood, at South Carolina up to this point.
Yeah, so hopefully they'll get the situation figured out. I'm sure the next time we talk to Shane, we'll have a more definitive answer on what his plans are moving forward, if it's not just announced already. But it's an unfortunate situation.
Yeah, and there's a part of it of letting the legal process play out and getting all the details and all that. Because here's the thing: you don't have to make a decision right now. This isn't like this was in the middle of the season.
Let the process play out.
Yes.
Let's see what happens with. Look, there's no justifying the 20 bags of weed. That is what it is. The handgun, on the other hand, that's a whole different story. If it's registered to him or whatever, if it's not, it's not a good then.
Yeah, and you have basically about 3 weeks until spring practice starts. So you have time to, again, go over everything and kind of decide what you want to do. But again, I think if we're all betting on this, we would assume Devontae Miles' time here at South Carolina is probably over with.
Yeah, I would say so.
Yeah, so that was the news yesterday. Just kind of wanted to give some quick thoughts on that. We'll dive back into baseball coming up next. We officially know what the rotation is going to be, even though we've already known. And also, I want to talk about expectations, because we ran a Twitter poll, and I think the results are pretty interesting. We'll get into that coming up next. It is The Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Feltry along with you here on your Thursday on The Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here on your Thursday on the game. And as we sit here just past 9 o'clock, that means we're roughly about 28 hours away from South Carolina baseball getting its season started. And as we've learned since last time you and I talked, Jack, of course, a doubleheader going to be taking place tomorrow with game number 1 at 1 o'clock and game number 2 in the 5 o'clock range, roughly 45 minutes after game number 1 is complete against Northern Kentucky. By the way, we'll be out there at Village Idiot over at Olympia at the Mills, just a short walk away from Founders Park tomorrow morning from 9 until 12:45, leading right up to pregame coverage, getting you set for a new season of Gamecock baseball. And I guess we can officially say we know the weekend rotation now because they tweeted about it yesterday, though we've kind of known this for a while. Riley Goodman game 1, Am Phillips game 2, and Brandon Stone for game 3 on Saturday.
Not a surprise, really, at all. Maybe we thought, okay, maybe Paul Maneri will do something a little different with the doubleheader on Friday, but no. It makes sense. The only thing is Goodman's on normal rest while Phillips and Stone are pitching 1 day earlier. But, again, it's a new season, so it's not really much of a surprise.
No, not at all. And tomorrow morning, we're going to get the opportunity to really dive in to all the specifics of those guys. We'll take a look at the lineup as well. Maneri's supposed to speak today, coming up at about 1 o'clock, and we'll certainly play some of that for you and really dive into the specifics, what we're expecting out of these individual players. But speaking of expectations, this is the point, and we've talked about it a little bit this week already, of where this fan base is expecting this team to be. And we ran a Twitter poll yesterday on the 107.5 The Game Twitter page. For one, we ran a poll the other day that I put up on excitement, on if people were excited for this season, and the majority of people said no. And then I put up another poll, or another poll was put up yesterday that said, what do you think is a fair expectation for the baseball team this year? And the options were host a regional, top half of the SEC finish, or just make the NCAA tournament. And 58% of people said just make the NCAA tournament, which I feel like that's pretty fair, all things considered, especially when you look at how tough the league is, how tough the schedule's going to be. If you can find your way into the field of 64, I think most of us will consider that a win.
I think the first two kind of go hand in hand, though, don't you think? Because if you're in the top half of the SEC, you're more likely than not, especially with how the schedule shakes out for South Carolina and the quality of wins they would have to be at the top half of the SEC, they're going to be hosting a regional at that point. So I think those kind of go hand in hand, but I don't know if that's necessarily realistic for this season. That would be a massive step forward, and it would change a lot of things. But I think more realistically, I think just getting back to the NCAA tournament in its own right is a very positive step in the right direction for this program if they are able to get there. Now, they'd have to go on the road for a regional. Who knows how that goes from there? But I think that should be that should realistically be the bare minimum for what South Carolina does this season. And if they meet that goal, great. If not, then there's going to be a lot of discussion about Paul Maneri's future, right or wrong. And I think for this team to get there, a lot of things have to go right. You gotta win some games early here. Like, I'm mainly talking about the Clemson series. Like, you have to probably win that series to really get the ball rolling a little bit, because once you lost that series last year, I think for me, the Oklahoma series where you blew that game in the 9th inning, a chance to win that first SEC series was the nail in the coffin for how the year was going to go. But I think early on the signs were there after getting swept by Clemson. So if you could take that Clemson series early, you get Princeton after that, and then you begin conference play at Florida, you start stacking some wins together, it could be a much better season. So, and I think getting to the postseason is a lot more attainable. Look, this team won 6 SEC games last year. They've improved the roster. You probably need somewhere in the ballpark of 12 to 13 conference wins at minimum to make the tournament. I think that is and should be a realistic goal for this team.
It should be, because we look at what this Maneri hire was made for. This program wasn't in terrible shape when they fired Coach Kingston. They fired Coach Kingston because they were just making the tournament. They weren't going deep in the tournament. They certainly weren't coming anywhere close to, making it to Omaha. That's why he got fired. For 90% of programs around the country, what he was doing was great. But here at South Carolina, when the standard is being in Omaha, the standard is winning national championships, you got to get yourself back into that realm to stick around here for a very long time. And Paul Maneri was hired really kind of like a mercenary, like a hired gun of, hey, this program's at like 80%. We need you to get it back in the 90 to 95% range, back to where we think it needs to be. You've done it before. You won a national championship. You have residency in Omaha. It shouldn't be a problem. And that's why we're setting the expectations the way that we are of like, hey, at bare minimum, you need to be in this tournament, if not hosting a regional coming up this year, as opposed to, and I had this thought yesterday when I was driving, how differently would we be looking at and talking about this team if, say, the Landon Powell hire had happened back in the summer of 2024? Because when they fired Coach Kingston, a bunch of names come up, right? And a lot of names that people pointed to was Landon Powell, coaching in North Greenville, of course, former player, alumni, all that kind of stuff, coaching experience, but not at this high of a level, where if he went out and had a historically bad year last year, I think we would have written it off as, okay, well, he's just learning and trying to adapt to coaching at a higher level. And then he goes out there and gets all these transfer players and flips the roster over. Okay, he's figuring it out. He's getting his feet underneath him. This will be the year that takes a step forward. And I think then we would say, just making the tournament, hey, that'd be great because you're stepping back in the right direction, you're moving forward, and that would be deemed as more acceptable because it'd be more, I think that'd be looked at more of as a tear down rebuild as opposed to just trying to take a few steps forward back to where you need to be or back to where you once were, which is what the expectations were with Maneri when he was hired.
Yeah. So, and look, for a guy like Paul Maneri, who's had a lot of success, he's got a great track record before last year of winning where he's gone, mainly at LSU and places like Notre Dame as well. And I think the fact that we're talking about the expectation this year being just making the tournament is kind of ridiculous because it should be, in hindsight, it should be getting to Omaha and winning a national championship because you don't bring in a guy like Paul Maneri who comes out of retirement, has won plenty before in his college career, winning as coach in the sport, just to make the tournament. That's not telling me much compared to what Mark Kingston was able to do for you. If this tenure ends for Paul Maneri and South Carolina doesn't even get to, like, let's say a super regional, keep in mind, for all the criticism Mark Kingston got, he got South Carolina one win away from going to Omaha in his first year.
Yep.
And then in 23, with a really good team that was kind of decimated by injuries towards the end of the year, still got them to a super regional and 2 wins away from going to Omaha. So, look, if this Maneri tenure ends with Kingston getting closer to a national championship than Maneri ever did, then that just tells me right then and there that this hire was a complete and flat-out failure. Though I think, I don't know about this year, but again, taking a step in the right direction is getting to the postseason because you missed it last year. But hopefully by like year 3, we're talking about this team like actually, okay, they've got some momentum. They made the tournament. Maybe they won a regional or something. Getting back to Omaha is where this team needs to be sooner rather than later.
Well, and I think about it from this perspective too of how embarrassed Paul Maneri must have felt with how last year went, right? Because again, he did take over a program that was in relatively good shape, all things considered. They just weren't at the mountaintop of the SEC and the college baseball world like they had been roughly a decade prior. And, he just looks at it and says, okay, all I got to do is inch them a few steps forward. And they completely tumbled back in the wrong direction to where his record last year, just from a conference standpoint, was the worst he'd ever had since he was back at Air Force back in the late 90s or mid 90s, excuse me. So it was a historically bad season for him as well. And this is a guy that, again, had won national championships, been to Omaha a ton of times and all that kind of stuff. That's unacceptable for him. And again, he got what he wanted in the offseason by going out there, flipping the roster, getting pitchers that throw harder, guys that seemingly hit for more power. And again, we'll get into all those specifics tomorrow as we really dive into the preview of opening day and all that kind of stuff. But this is the prove it year. It's like, okay, sure, maybe you can excuse some of last year of him, maybe not understanding the portal and NIL as well, or maybe not having the best evaluations for who the talent was on the team a year ago. No excuses this year. This is a put up or shut up year, because if you're going to go 6-24 in conference play, I don't think there's a third year of Paul Maneri in 2027.
This is his roster, unequivocally. Like 27 new players on this roster. He retained the players he wanted to retain. The players that he didn't feel made the cut for his roster, he let go and moved on. He didn't retain every player he wanted, but he got back the ones that he really, really wanted, like KJ Scobie, Bo Hollins, Riley Goodman, players like that, Jake McCoy. And you bring in all these new players. This team it's on paper better than last year, because they've got more power, speed, contact, pretty hard throwing pitchers. I think they got a better pitching staff in general compared to last year. All that should point to this team making the postseason. I don't think it is that hard to believe that this team could potentially win 7 or 8 more games than they did last year in conference play and potentially make the tournament. Schedule's going to be tough as always, but I think we'll learn early on with the Clemson series and the Florida series very early here what this team is going to be.
Again, we're going to be out there at Village Idiot at Olympia at the Mills tomorrow from 9 a.m. until 12:45. I believe the restaurant opens about 11, so come by and hang out with us. Grab some pizza, grab a drink, and then you can walk over to Founders Park once you're done and catch game number 1 at 1 o'clock and game number 2 again later in the afternoon, about 45 minutes after game 1 concludes, because, again, weather rolling in for Sunday, so they're going to get everything wrapped up by Saturday afternoon. So looking forward to that. Also, we're going to be talking with Stuart Lake, who's going to be on the call, of course, with Derek Scott, as always, coming up at 11:30 this morning, the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour. Get his perspective on this offseason and what he's looking forward to for Gamecock baseball in 2026. Coming up next, more fallout from the Super Bowl. Will Campbell finally owns up to his embarrassing performance on Sunday. We'll hear from him, as well as take a look at ratings. And Clint Kubiak officially introduced as the Las Vegas Raiders head coach. That's coming up next. It is the Extra Point. It's Outerhead and Jack Feltry with you on your Thursday here on the game.
started, I just wanted to say I apologize about the other night not being available to talk. Just had a lot of emotions, obviously going after tough loss, long year. Just a lot of emotions come with that. I just wanted to make sure that I had my head on properly before I said anything. I didn't want to say anything that I didn't need to say, and I know that can happen, especially with myself whenever there's emotions involved. So just wanted the night to sleep on things. Hopefully y'all can forgive me and we can move past it. But I appreciate y'all. I've enjoyed, this year, and look forward to doing it again. So.
Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Felcher with you here on your Thursday on the game. The voice of Patriots left tackle Will Campbell finally talking to the media the other day after the worst game of easily his entire life. Maybe he had a really bad game when he was playing Pop Warner or in middle school or something like that. I can't imagine that was the case. 14 pressures allowed. Drake May was under duress the entire night. He gave up a lot of sacks. That's a tough pill to swallow. And again, he didn't talk to the media after the game. Finally, again, kind of owning up to it after having a few days to process it. But I imagine it's not been a fun week for Will Campbell. Probably not showing his face around the Boston area too much this week.
Yeah, especially in that town where those fans, they care. They care as much as anybody, especially about their Patriots. But yeah, it was a real rough postseason for Will, and I think in the Super Bowl especially, giving up 14 pressures, like that's a ton for an offensive lineman. And look, I know there's talk about him playing out of position and playing tackle. Well, he was drafted as a tackle,
yep.
So that's
really good at LSU at tackle.
Yes, and they're not gonna move him. Mike Vrabel's already said they're not gonna move him to guard. So he's at tackle, and that's where he's going to be moving forward. And look, he had so much talk. I think before he came, I think it was a clip before he came to New England that if you give up a sack, you're going to be working at Amazon. And I've seen a lot of the Photoshops and AI renderings of Will Campbell in an Amazon uniform. So, look, he's going to be back next year, and he's going to have a chance to really redeem himself. But, yeah, if this is how he's going to be playing moving forward, yeah, he might actually be working at Amazon in a few years. So he's definitely got to learn from this, be better. And I also don't blame him for not talking to the media directly after that game, because I know if he or anyone were in his or I know if I or anyone were in his shoes, I'd probably be saying a lot of stuff that I'd regret. So, and I know he feels the same exact way.
Yeah, so rough performance for him. Now, he's not the only reason why the Patriots lost that game, but he was certainly the one that I think a lot of people are going to be circling as the most and most significant reason why they struggled so much. I found this list. This is an old thing because it's from ESPN's page 2, but of worst Super Bowl performances of all time. Now, they have Tony Eason, who was the quarterback for, funny enough, the Patriots, when they played Super Bowl 20 against the Bears and just got absolutely dominated in that 46-10 win, a 46-10 loss. He was 0 for 6 before he got benched in that game and got sacked 3 times. That is what they view, and again, this is an older list, so maybe there's some more recent ones that I'm not thinking of. That's what they view as the worst Super Bowl performance of all time, is giving up 14 pressures in the Super Bowl as a left tackle. Worse than that?
I don't know. I mean, especially for being a left tackle, one of the higher paid players, and I know he's just on his rookie deal, but eventually, I'm sure if he has a good enough first few years as a rookie, he could get paid a lot more. I would say, yeah. I think just that performance right there, how much it's been talked about, it's pretty bad.
Despite the fact the game was pretty one-sided for most of it, the ratings came back really good. 125 million people watched. That is the second most watched Super Bowl in the history of the game, but second behind only last year's game between the Chiefs and the Eagles, which, funny enough, was also a pretty one-sided game. So the final score and the way the game goes, not always indicative of how many people are going to end up watching what that number ends up being.
Yeah. I'm a little, I think it's a pretty good number there that, with the overall ratings for this Super Bowl. It may not have been a very good game, but I think with everything going on with the Bad Bunny performance and just the hype for this game in general. Of course, the viewership ratings were going to be pretty good.
Yeah, so at the end of the day, the NFL still wins no matter how the game ends up looking. And coming away from the game, of course, the Seahawks had their parade celebration yesterday, which if you've heard Ernest Jones addressing the crowd there, it's worth a listen. We can't play it on the radio because how vulgar it is, but he was definitely feeling himself, that's for sure.
Yeah, he was. I know we can't play what he said on air, but definitely, I think that Seahawks team definitely had a lot of built up, I don't know if frustration's the right word, but emotions after that game of people disrespecting them. And I think a lot of that was probably directed at Rams wide receiver Puka Nacua.
And while the Seahawks team was celebrating with their parade up there in Seattle, Clint Kubiak headed off to Las Vegas to be introduced as the Raiders' new head coach.
Because, guys, I just got done coaching about 2 days ago, so I got a lot to catch up on. But I'm really thankful for John for letting me come in here and have this opportunity. And I just, I can't tell you guys enough how excited I am and how grateful I am and how blessed I feel to be sitting in this room.
I don't want to be prisoner of the moment because we've seen these kind of things happen a lot where you have a hotshot coordinator sometimes coming off of a Super Bowl win that goes to what looks like a really good situation and they end up flaming out and are back to being a coordinator in a couple years. But Clint Kubiak has been the hot name at offensive coordinator for the past couple years at Seattle. A big part of Sam Darnold having the success that he had this season. He's going to Vegas with the number 1 overall pick to likely take Fernando Mendoza. They've got money to work with. They can potentially leverage Max Crosby to get even more stuff out of that for this upcoming year. Yeah, you still have questionable ownership with Mark Davis, but this seems like a relatively good situation he's getting himself into.
And I think the thought probably is, like, if Clint Kubiak can fix Sam Darnold, look, rookie quarterbacks that come into the league and start right away, usually, for the most part, tend to struggle. You get the rare few that have a good first season, like C.J. Stroud, for example, then he kind of flames out in years 2 and 3. I think with a guy like Fernando Mendoza, who they're probably likely going to draft, I would think. I don't know. I mean,
I'd be shocked if they didn't.
I heard Kubiak kind of talking the other day about it, and I don't know, but I still think they're going to end up drafting him at number 1 overall. I like you said, Tyler, I think we'd all be shocked if the Raiders didn't select Mendoza. But I think that's a pretty good situation there. Like, going to Vegas may not sound great because the franchise is kind of at a low point right now, but bringing in a guy like Clint Kubiak, an offensive guru who did wonders with Sam Darnold, and he even before that with a guy like with Sam Darnold there, I think that could be a good pairing right here.
I also think it helps too that you have Tom Brady at your disposal. Now, I don't know how much Pete Carroll was leaning on Tom Brady because Pete Carroll obviously has a ton of experience and won the Super Bowl himself, but for a first-time ever head coach to have the greatest quarterback to ever play the game within your ownership group that you can call up and say, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think about that? I can imagine that can be helpful.
No, certainly could. This is going to be an interesting team to watch next year. Quite frankly, I'd love to see the Raiders on like Hard Knocks or something. If they're still if HBO is still figuring out that heading into the season, just because I think it's going to be real interesting to watch. Kubiak as a head coach, probably Fernando Mendoza, and then also just having Tom Brady in the background there, luring in the shadows. Like, this is a good situation, honestly, for a rookie quarterback to enter. But I do wonder, like, do the Raiders go out there and try to sign a veteran and let Mendoza kind of sit for a year and let him learn, or do you throw him right into the fire? We'll see.
If you have the ability to do that, I'm always pro doing that because I like quarterbacks to be able to sit and learn.
Because let's be honest, I don't think the Raiders are going to be worth much next year. I don't think they're going to immediately turn it around and win the AFC West, especially in a division where the Broncos have gotten better, the Chargers have gotten better. You can imagine the Chiefs will probably be somewhere in the middle of the picture if everything goes right for them and they get healthy. The Raiders, I would not risk Mendoza going out there and just having an awful year and his stock just being at an all-time low when you could have a veteran come in, whether they have a guy on the team or not, bring in a veteran and let that guy handle the ropes for 1 year and then turn it over to Mendoza. I always like stuff like that.
You know, the Aaron Rodgers example is the best case scenario there of sitting behind a guy like Favre for a couple years and then taking over and becoming one of the best quarterbacks of all time in your own right. It doesn't always happen that way, but I'm with you. If the Raiders can have somebody start ahead of him, at least for a short period of time, where he's not just kind of thrown to the wolves in week number 1. I always think that's best. We'll see if they end up being able to do that. But I'm intrigued to see what Clint Kubiak's going to be like as a head coach out there in Vegas.
Yeah, so it'll be interesting to watch.
We'll come back and wrap up the hour. Some headlines in golf. Got Pebble Beach coming up this weekend, as well as a last name you're probably pretty familiar with re-entering your golf lexicon once again. We'll dive into that coming up next. It is The Extra Point. It's Hourhead and Jack Veltri here on your Thursday on The Game. Welcome back in. It is the Extra Point. Tyler Head and Jack Veltri along with you here on your Thursday on the game as we get into the springtime. I know it's not quite spring yet. Won't be for about another month, but spring sports are getting rolling. Of course, softball already in action. By the way, we'll be talking with Ashley Chastain Woodard coming up at 10:15 during the Garden Trust Hour. Baseball getting started tomorrow. Obviously, basketball still in full swing. Tournaments coming up in a little over a month. And golf also back in action as well. Had a pretty eventful weekend this past weekend, and looking forward to this weekend and the Pebble Beach Pro-Am out there in California, which gets rolling today and running through Sunday. Rory McIlroy looking to defend his title from a year ago, as he'll be in his first PGA event of 2026.
Yeah, we had a pretty, you mentioned it briefly there, the Waste Management Open.
The Wasted Management.
Yeah, Wasted Management Open. Yeah.
It was very wasted.
Yes, it was very, very wasted. Yeah, with everything going on there. I thought Hideki was going to close it out and win, but Chris Gotterup, how about him? He's already got 2 wins this year. He won the Sony Open in Hawaii to kick off PGA play and then wins the Phoenix Open in a playoff over Matsuyama. So, real good start for Chris Gotterup, who is playing today. I believe he tees off at 116. But Rory, that is going to be the talk of the town today. Rory McIlroy in his PGA debut this season. He obviously won this tournament last year. He also won the Players' Championship and, of course, the Masters. But he, it's going to be real interesting to see him out there today. He will tee off at 12:24 p.m. later on today, so looking forward to that.
And he's a guy that just seems like he has a new lease on life since finally getting over that hump of winning the Masters. You know what I mean? Like, you could tell that pressure that's been on him for so many years to finally close out and get that. And once he got that now, it just kind of seems like he's a lot more loose, a lot more relaxed.
Oh, yeah, dude. I mean, I was just looking it up just to see some of his stats. He's only 36 years old, but he looks like he's probably getting closer to 50 with the gray hairs on his head now. Like he's not looking the same age as he did when he first entered when he first turned pro at 18. But yeah, it's a long journey for him to get to that point now of. I'm sure he exercised a lot of inner demons that day when he finally won the Masters and he falls to his knees. I mean, he's got that weight lifted off his shoulder because he needed that Masters to win or to complete the Grand Slam, and he's got it now. And we'll see how he looks out there today. He hasn't won a tournament since the Masters, but I think it's all acceptable given the fact that he finally was able to win a Masters after coming up so short over the years.
Well, you mentioned him turning pro at 18. That's the interesting thing about golf is you can get in to the professional ranks pretty quickly, and I think the PGA Tour is going to be looking at a second-generation guy in Charlie Woods to hopefully kind of follow in the footsteps of his dad of being one of the big stars of golf coming out here in the next couple of years. We learned the other day that he is committed to Florida State as part of their 2027 class. And again, living up to what your father did is almost an impossible expectation, but his name carries weight. People are going to pay attention to what he's doing at Florida State. People are going to pay attention when he eventually gets to the PGA Tour. And quite frankly, the PGA Tour probably banking on this kid to be really good so they can hopefully recapture some of that magic of Tiger in the 90s and 2000s.
Yeah, I think everyone's still, myself included, hoping that Tiger will make a comeback at some point and return to the PGA Tour. I'm sure at some point he'll go on the senior tour and do that at some point, but I think everyone wants to see Tiger back at some point. Now, if he doesn't ever play on the PGA Tour again, if the injuries have just stacked up for him, I think Charlie Woods is going to be a real interesting name to watch. If you've ever seen this guy play on video or whatever, I think is going to eventually be really, really good. He's only 17. It's crazy to think we're talking about a guy that just literally turned 17 4 days ago, and he might be the next best thing. And I'm going to be really interested to see how he does at Florida State here in a few years. That'll be really interesting to watch, and then hopefully soon after that he's on the tour like his dad was.
Is it safe to say he'll probably command the highest NIL value of any college golfer we've ever seen?
Gosh, I would think so, and I think in a lot of ways we're probably going to see Florida State get a heap of donations, I'm sure, in money from probably Tiger to help support that golf program. I don't know much about Florida State's golf program history, but I mean, this kind of makes them a little bit more of a golf school in a lot of ways because, everything but football just seems to be doing pretty well.
Well, I can guarantee you that we're all going to do something most of us have never done in our entire life, and that's check on the scores of Florida State golf once he's on the team of like, hey, how's this kid doing? And again, I think the PGA Tour is going to be hoping he ends up being a superstar like his dad because again, it's a sport that really thrives when it has those people that draw in the casual viewer, and Charlie Woods has the ability to do that.
Yeah, look, most of us probably, a lot of people got to see Tiger in his prime, like 97 to 2000 and beyond that. Like, 2000 was his best year, and that's when I was born. So I did not get to see that really growing up. I got to see later Tiger when he wins the Masters in 2019 and so on and so forth. But yeah, I think everyone, including me, is kind of hoping this kid's going to be something special.
So we'll see what the young Woods can do. Again, commit to Florida State for the 2027 class. We'll dive back into Gamecock Sports women's basketball on the other side. So again, the Garner Trust Hour here on the Game.
As we close out the first hour here, just want to tell you guys real quick about our show sponsor. If you are a small business owner, a church, or other entity in need of a new HVAC system, AAA Heating and Air has exciting news for you. AAA now offers financing to qualified organizations to aid them in installing a new light commercial HVAC system. It's as easy as calling AAA for a quote or finding them online at callAAAtoday.com. Tell them Jack Veltri from 107.5 The Game sent you on over. At AAA Heating and Air, they have got your back. They're offering up to 12-month payment plans on repairs with no credit check. That's right. No need to worry about your credit score. As long as you're a homeowner with a valid bank account, you will be good to go. Take control of your comfort today by giving a call to AAA Heating and Air at 803-677-1500. Again, the number to call AAA Heating and Air, 803-677-1500. Give them a call today and breathe easy again.
Welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. It's our at Jack Veltri. Wes Mitchell supposed to be along with us coming up here in a moment. Says he's coming in hot, so
Of
maybe
course.
a few minutes late. Yeah, it's Wes.
What was it we were saying about him the other day? I think the door just opened. I can't tell.
Yeah.
But what was it we were saying about him the other day? He's always well, Chris is always here on time.
Yeah, Chris typically, because again, they're usually here just for 11 or 12, but he's usually out there at 10:30 doing his work on his laptop or whatever. And Wes, with coffee in hand, is always coming in as the show starts.
And one less kid to worry about.
That's
so.
true. Yeah. He's Chris has got twice the kids and still gets here on time. So we just like to bug Wes about it, but he'll get in here in a minute, and we'll dive into a lot of stuff in this hour. Man, what a loaded weekend. And not just from a national sports standpoint. We mentioned golf with the Pebble Beach Pro-Am going on, Daytona 500 this weekend. NASCAR getting their season officially rolling.
Yeah,
looking forward to that coming up on Sunday. And then just tons of Gamecock sports. Baseball, again, starting tomorrow. And we'll be out there all morning long at Village Idiot getting you prepared for that. We have men's basketball taking on Alabama, a Charles Bediako-less Alabama, but an Alabama team that still is most likely going to beat South Carolina, if we're just going to be honest here. But still, you have that if you want to check that out. We have women's basketball, which we'll get into in a moment. Huge matchup taking on LSU coming up on Saturday night. And again, we're going to talk to Ashley Chastain Woodard coming up here in about 15 minutes about the softball team that is having yet another tournament this weekend, the Carolina Classic, where they'll take on Louisville, Boston twice, and then Kennesaw State over the course of Friday and Saturday to once again kind of get their season rolling for 2026.
Yeah, so we have a lot to dive into. Yeah, you excited about Daytona this weekend?
Yeah, looking forward to it. Qualifying last night, duels tonight. Always fun. Excited to get a new season off and rolling, kind of see who separates themselves from the pack early. Hopefully it's not a, carnage fest where everybody wrecks like it has been in years past, and we get a quality race out of it. But, excited, looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. But we got a big women's basketball game coming up tomorrow night. Or I'm sorry, Saturday.
Prime time.
I know, dude. I'm like getting ready. I'm like ready for Friday. I'm like, man, it feels like Friday in a lot of ways. This week, the weeks in February have been pretty slow for being the shortest month of the year. But yeah, I mean, me and Elijah really talked a lot about this game yesterday, and I think there's a lot of hype around it. And I'll ask you kind of the question that we talked about a lot yesterday. Does it feel like this is LSU's best chance to knock off South Carolina? It's at home. It's at LSU. Kim Mulkey, while she has beaten South Carolina and Dawn Staley before, both those wins came at Baylor. She is 0-7 lifetime since becoming the head coach at LSU against South Carolina. So that coupled with Full Wiley getting her first game back against South Carolina, I feel like this really shapes up for LSU to potentially win this game.
This is definitely the juiciest matchup, right? Since Kim Mulkey's been at LSU these past couple of years. And again, she did win the national championship a couple of years ago, but didn't have to go through, South Carolina in the postseason to do that, obviously. So that is kind of the one thing that she's yet to accomplish down there in Baton Rouge. And quite frankly, let's be honest, she was brought to Baton Rouge to beat Dawn Staley in South Carolina, right? Like, she already had done what she'd done to Baylor. They paid her a ton of money to come down to Baton Rouge so they could take the top spot in the SEC. And again, national championship, but hasn't gone through Dawn Staley to do it yet. So that's the one thing that's still hanging over her head. And again, she's fiery. She's controversial. She's always going to garner headlines anytime she does anything. She once again has a really good team. They're number 6 in the nation. It's going to be a rowdy environment on Saturday night. She's probably going to be wearing something ridiculous as always, because that's just who Kim Mulkey is. She's got a really good team. You add in the Malaysia Full Wiley factor. That just adds layers to this, but it's kind of one of those things that, again, until proven otherwise, you're always going to say, well, Dawn Staley just kind of always finds a way to get the better of Mulkey since she's been at LSU.
How many is this in a row now?
Oh, God.
So
the fact that
she's 0-7
But like the total
But
series,
LSU
15 or 16, right?
I was about to say
It's up there.
the fact that we've lost count tells you all you need to know, I think. And we were talking about this yesterday. Jack, have you seen the commercial? The South Carolina LSU commercial where they it was like a Valentine's Day, like love is in the air.
The one on ESPN?
Yeah.
Yeah, and then it has Malaysia. It says special guest Malaysia Fulwiley, and then it shows her in a Gamecock uniform and then an LSU uniform. Very, very well done.
And I think the thing is, ESPN and ABC have been promoting this for feels like a while now since we learned this game was going to be taking place on Valentine's Day. Because keep in mind, like, women's basketball is typically reserved for on the weekends, typically on Sundays, and the fact that this game is going to be on Saturday on Valentine's Day, let alone in a prime time slot, 8:30 p.m. ABC. Typically, this is when the NBA is holding that slot around this time of year, as ABC usually does NBA on Saturday nights. This just really speaks to how big this game is in a lot of ways, and how much I guess the national folks think this is like a legit rivalry. In a way, it is, but it's like you got to win some games with your LSU and Kim Mulkey to really make it feel more like a rivalry.
Well, when you look at where women's basketball is as of right now, in terms of annual matchups that you always know are going to be taking place, this is like the biggest one. Now, yes, when South Carolina and UConn have played each other on a consistent basis, that more often than not, kind of ends up being the biggest one. That not on the docket this year. Will return in the or in the non-conference slate coming up next year. But when you looked at the entire scope of women's basketball for this season, if you had to pick one game that could have occupied a primetime slot on Saturday night with all these other sports going on, like there's going to be this weekend that Jack and I just mentioned, I don't know if you could have picked a bigger game than South Carolina and LSU. And it's not just the fact that it's going to be a top 6 matchup because LSU is number 6 and South Carolina is number 3, but you have all these layers to it, the history between Dawn Staley and Kim Mulkey, the Malaysia Fulwiley factor, and the fact that you're going to be looking at some of, once again, all the best players in this sport on the court at the same time. The SEC elements added in there too because it's among, if not the best leagues in women's basketball currently. So you have so many things baked in that, like, this is likely going to be the most viewed, at least regular season game of the entire year.
Well, I think, guys, if you're going to continue to grow a game, in this case, women's basketball, you do need those layers of drama to capture. Like, I'm not talking about your hardcore fan is already watching, right?
Yeah.
You need those extra layers of drama to capture the casual fan or maybe the future hardcore fan. I think you don't really watch even if you have two good teams, you don't necessarily care if you don't have that kind of reason. It's why professional wrestling dials up all the storylines and drama and kind of soap opera elements because it gives you. It's weird, the human brain, like it will make you care a little bit more. Like I had no. I mean, I maybe would have watched a little bit of the Olympics, but then once I heard, hey, Lindsey Vonn is going for gold at 41 with a torn ACL, all of a sudden I'm going, oh, I care about this because there's an extra added layer to it. So this one has not lacked in intensity at all, but I mean, I'm just really curious to see how Fulwiley and the current South Carolina players interact with each other. Like how do Raven and Malaysia interact? On the court.
Yeah.
You have, it's not obviously the same team South Carolina had last year. Like, people have moved on. You've had transfers in. Does Latson have anything at all extra to care about with Fulwiley? Probably not. But Tessa versus Malaysia, like, is it more, hey, that's my buddy, or is it more like, that's my buddy, I want to show her up? Is it more there's some actual tension?
Yeah,
I have no idea. I'm curious to see.
Yeah, and look, we know what happened with Malaysia Fulwiley opting to transfer to LSU, but it didn't seem like it was like a bad blood type of situation. Like, hey, Malaysia wanted this, South Carolina wanted this, and they kind of went their separate ways. Obviously, South Carolina went out and got Tanaya Latson pretty quickly after the season ended, so you didn't feel like you had this glaring hole left behind by Malaysia Fulwiley necessarily, and she's had a really strong season out there at LSU, so both sides are obviously still doing really well, and it's kind of one of those situations of like the two exes that run into each other at the grocery store or something, and you can even have the cordial, oh, how you doing? Nice to see you. Hope you're doing well. Or you just act like you don't know each other and continue on and harbor whatever feelings are still there between one another. So we'll see, but it's going to play out on national television nonetheless.
And I think with this game being on national TV, I think ABC is kind of rooting for there to be some tension between Full Wiley and South Carolina. I think tension and bad blood and drama increases viewership. And look, this game on its own, I'll be interested to see what the numbers are for this game whenever they eventually do come out on what the viewership is. It's probably going to have, I would imagine this is probably going to be the highest viewed women's basketball game of the season up to this point. It better be, with this game taking up such a big slot on Valentine's Day at 8:30. But yeah, I think most people are probably rooting for this game to have some bad blood. It just adds more to, like, if this game doesn't feel like a rivalry because Dawn has really owned Mulkey since she's been at LSU, maybe this is the Full Wiley facing South Carolina would be what this rivalry really needs moving forward.
And that game will feature 5 women that are on the John R. Wooden Award midseason top 20 watch list: Joyce Edwards and Tanai Latson from South Carolina, Malaysia Full Wiley, Flau'jae Johnson, Michaela Williams from LSU. So again, the best of the best going against each other coming up on Saturday night at 8:30. Again, on national television, and believe we're either going to have that here on the game or on B106.7. I'll get you the details for that a little bit later. But it's not the only women's sports in action this weekend. Softball back in action for the Carolina Classic. We'll check in with Ashley Chastain-Woodard coming up next about how her team did in weekend number 1 and what to look forward to coming up this weekend as well. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating here on your Thursday on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. It's out ahead, Jack Felcher, Wes Mitchell, along with you here on your Thursday on the game. We're getting you set for a loaded weekend of Gamecock sports. Again, baseball getting things rolling coming up tomorrow. Men's and women's basketball in action, and another weekend number 2 for the Gamecock softball team. And joining us now once again on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines to talk all things Gamecock softball is head coach Ashley Chastain-Woodard. Coach, appreciate you taking your time as always. How are we doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on again. Obviously just preparing for week 2 and doing awesome here on Thursday morning.
Well, we were locked in for your squad's 5 games last weekend. We, of course, would love to be sitting here talking about a 5-0 team to start the season. Didn't play out that way. You guys dominated your matchups against Syracuse, Binghamton, and Winthrop, but 2 really, really tough losses, especially considering the way those things played out against Virginia Tech. Now that you've had a couple days to process it, what are your takeaways, and how do you assess what went down in weekend number 1?
Yeah, I think in the 2 losses against Virginia Tech, they stung definitely, and a lot of respect for Virginia Tech. They have a really good team, definitely a top 25 team, if not a top 15 team, and a lot of respect for their offense. They have a really powerful offense, and we knew that going in, and I think we played bad 2 innings. We had the lead in both games and, just really couldn't solidify a win. So, we're moving on from it, but we definitely learned a lot. And I anticipated that we would learn a lot about this group in the first couple weeks as we played together against other opponents for the first time. And, that definitely rang true. We learned a lot about the team. I was really happy with a lot of different things. I thought we played defense really well. I thought we had opportunities offensively to win the game. We just couldn't come through with the hit that won us the game in either one of those innings. But when you play the highest level of softball, we played bad 2 innings on the weekend, and that cost us 2 losses. So, we don't want to dwell in it. We definitely want to move on mentally and physically and turn the page because it is a really long season. So I think that we just really gathered up and learned a lot about our group. We had a lot of conversations about some adjustments that we needed to make that we've been focusing on in our training this week as we go into week 2. But, obviously really proud of the 3 wins against Syracuse, Binghamton, and Winthrop, who were all good teams. So definitely wanted to celebrate that with this group. But moving on to week 2, which we've got some good teams coming in this weekend.
Coach, I appreciate you hopping on as always. We talked about that left side of the infield all offseason. You got to go see them play for 5 games now. I thought, for a first weekend out there together, like they really, I feel like, showed some athleticism and just kind of made some beyond the routine plays. But internally, what did you think of Shea Anderson and Tate Davis at shortstop and third base, respectively?
Yeah, I thought those 2 played really well all weekend over there and was really proud of them for that. I think going out of the weekend, for me personally, that was a highlight, the way that Shea and Tate played. And I think you're spot on. They made all the routines, and then I thought like they made some kind of out-of-range plays, just some really athletic plays, and we're going to need them to do that, all year. So it was really good for the staff and the team and really just honestly for their own confidence and belief in the first weekend that, they're good enough to play the positions defensively every day for us. So I think those guys are going to only keep getting better every game that we play, much like I think the whole team. We're just going to keep getting better and better every weekend. So I would say it was a highlight for me as well.
Hey, Ashley, let's flip over to the pitching side. A little bit of a tough weekend in those games against Virginia Tech. Number 1, what did you learn about that group with the new arms you have on staff, and what differences do you hope to see in the circle this weekend?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think game 1 against Virginia Tech, I thought Jory, got us off on a really good start, which we expected from her as our most veteran arm. And, I think we had a couple first outings that didn't go the way that we had obviously wanted them to. And I think if you were talking to the pitchers themselves, they would agree. I think the pitching overall was probably a little bit of a disappointment for me on the weekends, not because they're not capable, but, we've got to figure out how to put together our staff and really go win some games. And, we have more depth than we've ever had. So I think the beauty of our staff is that when we really feel like someone doesn't have it in a moment, we've got a lot of other arms to go to that are ready in the bullpen. So I think we're learning and understanding how to use the depth of our bullpen. I do think there were a few highlights. I thought, Josie Marin had some really big moments to get us off the field. And, KG Favors threw really well against Winthrop on Sunday as a first appearance. So I do think there was some good in there, but holistically, I think that we need to pitch better in like a higher leverage moment with our more skilled arms at the top, which I think they'll do that. I think, just kind of the lights of the first game and the first weekend, I think that they will, reflect on it, learn from it, and move on and be better as we keep giving them the ball. And we want them to feel like we're going to keep giving them the ball because I don't want them to go out and really pitch in fear or hesitation at all. So, that's why you saw we went right to Emma Friedel again on Friday after she didn't pitch as, the way we wanted her to Friday night against Virginia Tech. So we're going to keep giving them the ball. We have a ton of belief in them, and we have a ton of belief in Zach, their pitching coach, and how he manages them. So we'll get it right, and I expect that they'll be better in the weeks coming.
Again, talking to head softball coach Ashley Chastain Woodard here on the AAA Heating Air phone lines. I did want to ask specifically about Emma Friedel because in her 2 outings against Syracuse and Binghamton, did phenomenally, struggled a little bit in the 2 times that she went out there against Virginia Tech, particularly in that first game on Friday. And again, she's new to the program, coming over from Kennesaw State. You're a former pitcher yourself. What are those conversations with her like this week? As again, you do try and reinstill the confidence, like, hey, maybe the first outing didn't go the way you wanted it to, but we got belief that you're going to be able to hit your stride and figure this out.
Yeah, we talked to her after Thursday night and continued that conversation through the weekend, and really just continuing to tell her we're going to give her the ball. She's got really good stuff, and really a conversation of trust, not only trusting us, which she's a great person. She has high character. I think she trusts our environment highly. I think just more belief and trust in herself that she can get the job done against the better opponents that we're going to face throughout the year. And we're going to need her to do that. We're going to need her against some of our toughest offenses, through the course of our season. So just continuing to pump that trust into her and encouraging her to trust her stuff and, just working on a lot of the mental game aspect with her. I think that Emma has a lot of different tools, and on the days where she has all of her tools accessible, she's going to be really good. On days that, she can't tap into some of her tools based on command or, whatever she's experiencing. Like I said, I think we have a lot of depth behind her to be able to go to someone quick. So we're working through that. I think she learned a lot and is very skilled. So I think the longevity of the season will fare very well for her.
Coach, we talked a lot in the offseason about maybe more speed, more power on this team. Who is faster? Would it be Lexi Shaver, Tori Inslee, Nia McKnight? Do y'all like time that? Do y'all have GPS? Do y'all do any of that in the offseason? Who's actually faster among that crew? Like there was some girls moving on the base paths, I felt like, this weekend.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up because I also felt that was a huge upgrade for us, getting this team going as just the athleticism we had on the bases. And all of the players that you mentioned, and Inslee and Shaver and McKnight, they're all really explosive and really fast. We have a ton of experience and trust in McKnight and the way that she runs and the decisions that she makes on the base path. So we see her in a lot of leverage situations, which is really a great tool for us to have. It's really invaluable for our success. I think, honestly, foot to foot, probably Bennett is our fastest runner.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, she's really fast, and we do time them. And our sports performance strength and conditioning coach, Josh Madole, has done such an excellent job all year of developing them, speed and power. And so he times them all the time. I think on the clock, Bennett is one of our fastest runners, but, she's a really dynamic player, so we have to use her correctly in every game because she does pitch and she does hit, and, she can play some defense for us. So I think out of Shaver, Inslee, and McKnight is the fastest, and it's just such an invaluable tool for us to have all of those guys be able to take extra bases because of their speed. And we've been really working on their decision making because you can have a ton of speed but make really poor decisions on the bases and, get yourself out too much. But, they're all becoming really good decision makers on the bases, really good slides and leads. And I definitely think that is a strength holistically of the team.
Got about another 60 seconds here, Ashley. With this weekend coming up, good chance for you guys to bounce back. Who's one player in particular that you feel like is going to have a really good weekend?
Oh, that's a great question. I think Tori Ensley is going to continue to get better and better every time we play. We had her in the middle of the order, which is a really good spot for her right now. I think she's somebody that as she gets better, we could end up pushing her a little bit more to the top of the lineup, but we're going to give her some time, just to really get some ABs underneath her and get really comfortable with what she's doing. But I think she's somebody that's going to continue to impress you defensively and offensively. And Tori, she's just a true 5 tool. I mean, she can bunt, she has power, she can run, she can throw. So it's really fun to watch her play. So I think Ensley is going to be somebody that continues to get better. And, I think Tate Davis is going to continue to have really big offensive performances for us. Quincy Lelio had like almost 10 walks the first weekend of season, which if you think about it is just absolutely crazy, just how good she is at the strike zone. So I think short answer is Tori Ensley, but I do expect all of, our starters to continue to have really good performances as we move along.
Coach, best of luck to your crew this weekend. I'm sure we'll be checking with you sometime next week before y'all head out to the West Coast of California to take on a lot of good teams next weekend.
Yeah, well, thank you guys so much for having me on. We're looking forward to the weekend, and maybe it'll be a little warmer than it was last weekend, which I'm a huge fan of. So we'll see you guys out at Beckham.
Certainly looks that way. We appreciate it, Coach. Ashley Chastain-Woodard there joining us on the AAA Heat and Air phone lines. Carolina Classic this weekend. Doubleheader tomorrow. They'll take on Louisville at 1:30, and then Boston University at 4 o'clock. Both those games streamed on SEC Network Plus. Then Saturday, Boston University again at 3 o'clock, and then they wrap up with Kennesaw State Saturday afternoon at 5:30. Again, both those games on SEC Network Plus as well. We'll come back. We'll continue on with the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling Heating, a big name in FCS making the jump up to FBS. What can we expect out of this? We'll dive into that next here on The Game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler Head, Jack Belcher, and Chris Clark, Wes Mitchell, along with you. Sorry.
He does look like Chris, I guess.
I rarely misidentify you guys.
Hi, I'm Wes.
Slip up by me. I wasn't here yesterday. I'm thrown off by the week, so that's my mulligan.
You should be well rested, ready to catch up on not being here yesterday.
I wasn't well rested. I told Jack about sitting in Atlanta traffic for 2 hours yesterday, so that wasn't fun. So no, well rested is
Welcome
not
back to Columbia.
is not the way to describe me. That actually made this morning's traffic not that bad, all things considered. It was a little slow coming in, but after sitting in what I did yesterday, Columbia's got nothing on Atlanta. So not fun. Facts. Very much facts. I mentioned it before the break. There is no team more synonymous with FCS football than the North Dakota State Bison, the 10-time national champions, all those coming since 2011. But they are leaving the FCS subdivision behind for FBS as they will officially join the Mountain West Conference this upcoming year. Guys, we've talked a lot about realignment in the past handful of years. I can't remember one happening this quickly. We're in the month of February, and they're getting set to join the conference in July officially, but they'll start playing football obviously coming up in September. This is a rare instance of something happening within the same calendar year.
Yeah, it is. What does this do for other teams in the Mountain West if they just come in and are just better than you instantly? Like, I mean, I don't expect this to be a completely smooth transition. There obviously is going to be a leap in everything. You know, everybody around you is going to have better resources to start with, you would think. But man, I'm kind of torn on this, boys, because all right, if you're North Dakota State, you're kind of messing with a good thing, I feel like, versus going to be like not an elite team in the FBS. Like, you're an elite program, an elite tradition for your level. To sort of just run off into the wilderness and take a chance is kind of gutsy, I feel like. And I'll be very curious to see which side this falls on, because I could really see it going either way. But I was just looking at a Yahoo Sports piece that from this morning, and they already have North Dakota State as the fourth best team in the Mountain West, and they just arrived there this week. So,
and keep in mind, this is a Mountain West that no longer features Boise State, since Boise's going to the newer version of the Pac-12. So, you know, when you look at the teams in this conference, maybe maybe it's because we see how well North Dakota State's done over the last handful of years in the FCS, and you're looking at this like, who are the big dogs that can really stop North Dakota State from being that good again? I think just the fact that it's not more so the teams, but it's just the transition from going from FCS to FBS. That's a relatively big jump, and it would be really cool to see North Dakota State have a lot of success right out of the gate. Even a school like James Madison that made a very seemingly smooth transition from FCS to FBS. It took them about a year or two to really get it going to where they are now. And I think maybe the same happens here with North Dakota State, but we'll see.
Well, and this is the question that I always ask anytime you see a James Madison, when App State made the transition about a decade ago, Georgia Southern, these programs that have these rich traditions in FCS of competing for and winning national championships. Okay, money aside here, because again, we all know making the transition up to FBS is going to garner you more money, in the long run there. Would you rather be playing for and winning national championships at a lower level, or being at a higher level, again, making more money, and then, competing for your conference championship, and maybe now that we have an expanded field, getting yourself into the playoff, but not really having a shot to necessarily win a national championship?
Yeah, I think it's a fascinating question, man. I think if you're in that universe, sort of like if you're a fan of that team, if you go to that school, you maybe enjoy being the big fish in a small pond. Like, you maybe enjoy being the baddest, and we're going to have a chance to compete for titles every single year. Now, if you're in that administration, if you are running that school, like, the whole idea of the fact that they talk about athletics being the front porch to your university or college. Well, there's nothing that JMU could have done at FCS that would come close to the exposure I guarantee they got from making the college football playoff. You're not going to win it. Your chances of winning it are minuscule.
Right.
But just to get talked about among the – I mean, what does even a football fan – I'm talking about a non-football fan, a random football fan, hey, tell me about the FCS. What does the average football fan know about the FCS?
Probably that North Dakota State dominates it. That's about it.
If that.
Yeah.
Wait, which Dakota? Is it North? Is it South? You know what I'm saying? Like, so, seriously. Now, ask a random college football fan, hey, what did JMU do this past season? Oh, didn't they make the playoff? So I think from a administrative standpoint, there is money in being in the college football greater conversation, I think.
And I think you guys are probably right about this, with that it's a case that North Dakota State's probably not going to win. But if there was any school that I think could win a case like this to just be eligible automatically to play for the postseason and bowl games and a conference championship and the CFP, I think it probably is North Dakota State because of their track record of what they did. It's not like there's some scrub program just joining the FBS. Like this is the premier program at the FCS level in terms of winning every single year and getting to the FCS playoffs, winning multiple national championships. But I do agree. Like, I think if all these others, we're in a different time now with NIL and everything else going on in college athletics, that nothing would surprise me if North Dakota State were approved. But I just don't see it realistically happening. And I think there is going to be somewhat of a transition anyway for North Dakota State. Like, yeah, the teams on paper, North Dakota State probably stacks up pretty well against like Air Force, Hawaii, Nevada, New Mexico, like all these teams in the Mountain West. Like, it's not the most difficult conference, I don't think, for North Dakota State to succeed in, but I think it makes a lot of sense to just keep things the way they have been with all these other teams having to wait it out with a postseason ban to start. I think maybe North Dakota State needs to fall in that same picture.
Yeah, because the NCAA has a 2-year probation period when you make the transition to not go to the postseason. For those that remember when Cignetti was at James Madison, when they made the transition, they had that great season. Everybody was kind of open arms about, hey, they should be able to play in a bowl game and all that kind of stuff. I believe they ultimately did get allowed to do that because there weren't enough teams that qualified for the bowls at least with 6 wins. So we'll see if North Dakota State can win that case. They're also going to have to pay about $17 million plus to make this transition in terms of the exit fee of the FCS and being able to join the Mountain West. They're going to take a discount on the media rights as well, I believe. So it's going to be a lot of kind of like SMU joining the ACC, a lot of self-funding for a while before this really kind of evens out. But again, they know in the long run, financially, this makes more sense.
I wonder what they have NIL resource-wise compared to, the rest of the Mountain West.
Yeah, it's a good question. It's not crazy to think, probably more.
And I wonder what it was compared to the FCS. Like, I got to imagine North Dakota State was probably at the tops in the FCS, but what does that necessarily mean in the greater picture of FBS, especially in the Mountain West level?
We'll see. It's going to be something fascinating to watch as, again, they're going to start playing the Mountain West this upcoming season, so no time to wait around for that. We'll come back, wrap up the hour. What's going on in the Olympics, and what Olympic sports could we be successful at? We'll discuss that coming up next. It is the Garnet Trust Hour, presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. Tyler, Wes, and Jack on your Thursday on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Garnet Trust Hour presented by Krantz Cooling and Heating. It's our Ed Jack Veltry and Wes Mitchell along with you, wrapping up the hour here on your Thursday on the game. How locked in have we been on the Olympics these past couple days, guys?
Well, we got Canada taking on Czechoslovakia right now. It's the first period. Canada just had a power play but did not score. But, I saw curling was on, so watched a little bit of it, and then the whole Lindsey Vonn situation.
How about you, Wes?
I just want to know what the actual answer is, Jack. Have you been locked in, or are you just watching the TV above your head right
Watching
now?
the TV right now. Yeah.
I know, but have you been locked in?
I mean, for the whole event so far.
Not locked. All right.
Why
To answer the question.
Why are you yelling at us?
You getting defensive?
A little bit. All right, so we're just.
I'm not locked in. Let me just answer.
I'm not locked in, but
Let me answer the question.
I'm interested to watch hockey. So now that it's finally gotten going.
Well, and later on today, America going to take on Latvia at 3:10. I believe that game will be on USA or NBC, one of those two.
Yeah, USA Network.
So that'll get rolling for the United States men's hockey. Women's hockey has already been playing there. So that's probably the event that I think the casual sports fans maybe looking the most forward to, because it's the event we're most familiar with, right? That's the fun thing about the Winter Olympics is there's so many events that, like, you don't really know how they work, but you're just kind of fascinated to watch them. I was when I got to my parents' house the other day, I watched curling with my Nana for like 15 minutes. Neither one of us understood what was happening, but it was fascinating to see, and everybody's so efficient with the way they sweep the ice, and the person that, I don't know if what do you call it, the rock or the curl or whatever, and how they put it out there. And again, it's a fun thing to really just kind of sit back and watch, even though you have no idea what's going on. And I feel like a lot of the Winter Olympic events are like that.
Yeah, they are. I'm kind of a little bit disappointed with myself that I haven't picked something and just like gotten in on it. Most times, summer or winter, I'll maybe pick a sport or two and just be like, all right, let's lock in. But normally, like we were talking about earlier, there's got to be that little hook for me, like, this person's going for greatness, or the Lindsey Vonn thing. The only thing that was unfortunate about just not the only thing, obviously, but from a viewership standpoint, the fact that it was not I think a lot of us woke up and just saw like headline, she crashed, she's hurt. Like, it wasn't something, like, if it had been at 5 o'clock in the evening, I think a lot of people would have sat and like watched it. That is the one thing about it. It used to be, Tyler, this may have been the case when you were young. When I was young, like, a lot of times they would still do the Olympics on tape delay.
Yep.
And you would have a choice. Like, you could find who won an event, but it wasn't just like in your face. Now with 24/7 news, like, you couldn't not know that something happened to Lindsey Vonn. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Like they would literally like kind of hide the winners, and you would actually watch it at prime time for here in the U.S.
Well, and for, like this year they're in Italy, so they're 6 or so hours ahead of us. So, yeah, a lot of these events are taking place when we're sleeping, or like in years past in Beijing and stuff like that. Not feasible hours to watch it live, but, yeah, and especially in the social media age, we just have so much information at our helm that, most people didn't see that live, but knew about it, when it did happen. All that being said, I do have to ask, if you had to pick one Winter Olympic event that you think you could be the most successful at, if we signed you up for Team USA today, what event are you taking on?
All right. Would not be figure skating. It would not be hockey.
You look like a figure skater, Wes. Come on.
Yeah. Let me say, if I had to, train for my life, I'd maybe say some speed skating.
Okay.
Smaller guy. Like, I feel like if you taught me how to do it.
Yeah. Low center of gravity.
Yeah, maybe I got a shot.
What about you, Jack?
I'm going to go curling. I think that's probably the one that I think almost everyone in this room I feel like could do. Now, I don't know what the thing is called that they push out, the little like circular thing.
The curl. I don't know.
I thought it was the rock.
The rock.
Maybe it is the rock.
Yeah.
Is it?
I think that is what it's called. Yes, the rock. So I don't know if I could do that. That seems a little bit. It looks easy, but it looks also pretty complex. The sweeping the ice though, with I think it's called the moving stone. I don't know
The stone. I think.
yeah,
Stone,
I'm
okay.
like looking it up. I'm saying like to sweep the ice in front of a moving stone. So I don't know if it's the rock, moving stone, whatever.
Stone, I think.
But to use like the brooms or the brushes to like sweep in front of the ice, I think that is something I could do, and I think a lot of people could probably do as well. So I don't know. I'm going for like the easiest thing possible because I'm not very good at skating. I'd love to say hockey. That'd be awesome, but definitely not.
Do you ski?
Do I ski? I've never skied before. Never have before.
It's actually very fun.
I have
It is
always
super fun.
Always wanted to. I think that's something I want to do probably in the next few years here.
I'd probably go luge. I like speed and being strapped to or not even strapped, you're sitting on a sled going like 80 miles an hour through an ice chute. Actually sounds kind of fun.
Luge or bobsled? Which would you?
Ooh.
Bobsled would be
Bobsled
cool.
looks kind of cool too.
I think you get a better sensation of speed if with luge because
Yeah.
you're not covered, like you're kind of exposed. I don't know. I think it'd be fun. I don't know how good I'd be at it, but I'd give it a try.
Did y'all watch Cool Runnings when you were little?
Did not.
Probably.
Oh my goodness, classic for me.
I have to add that to the list. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs on the way here on the game.
All right, guys, let me tell you about our presenting sponsor for this hour, the Krantz Cooling and Heating Garnet Trust Hour. It's KrantzCooling.com, 803-672-3224. I have it on good authority that Krantz Cooling and Heating has actually been at Chris Clark's house this morning. They may be there right now. Hopefully you don't need them to come to your house, but if you do, if you're having issues, whether that is heating or cooling, hit them up. If you go to that website, you can actually schedule an appointment right there at KrantzCooling.com. If you want to avoid having to call them at a later date, go ahead, call now or go online and ask them about preventative maintenance for your home or business so that they can come out, make sure everything is running in tip-top shape and everything is running efficiently so that you make sure you're not expending extra power. That's our friends at Krantz Cooling and Heating. Again, KrantzCooling.com. It's Krantz with a K, cooling with a K.com, 803-672-3224.
welcome back in. 11 o'clock on your Thursday morning. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs, Towerhead, West Mitchell. Chris Clark will be along momentarily. He told me he has to get all of his correct equipment set up because, as you mentioned, Krantz Cooling Heating actually out at his house as we speak, getting everything fixed there so he and his family aren't freezing to death when the temperatures drop at night. So as always,
we should have made him do the live read.
That would have made a lot of sense. Yeah, no, I mean, quite literally, he's experiencing the Krantz Cooling Heating difference as we speak. Chris, what's the assessment of what our friends over at Krantz have done for you today?
Well, so not here yet. We're in our window.
Okay.
So they haven't been here yet. And guys, luckily, I only have I have one room that work out of, do the radio, and so Krantz outfitted me with a mini split, which is incredible. If you've never seen a mini split, they're amazing. They're super efficient. So the rest of the house is fine, right? A little bit colder last night. Everything's good, but in the room I work out of, we just have we got to clean out the mini split, basically just some regular maintenance. So I just shut it off while we do that. Everything's fine. But they always do an amazing job. So looking forward to having them out here in a little while. I'll report back.
Yes.
When nice and clean.
Well, I say when you get the opportunity to do the next Krantz read, we'll get your full review of everything they did. How about that?
Full review, yes.
There you go. So definitely appreciate Krantz Cooling Heating as always for being a partner and quite literally helping out Chris today. Real quick before we move into some football stuff, I asked the question to Wes and Jack at the end of the last hour. Summer or Winter Olympics going on right now. If Chris Clark is picking an event to take part in, what event are you choosing?
Oh, man. Let me tell you a couple that I'm not doing, because we were talking about this last night watching. The skiing is, I think I told you guys I'm going skiing next month. I'm sitting there going, these people are going 60 and 70 miles an hour. It's terrifying. They have the really cool, I guess it's a drone view, the drone kind of flying behind them, and you can just get a sense for how fast they're going. Completely insane. Also, the ski jumping looks incredible.
Yeah.
But I can't get there. I don't know. I can't do anywhere close. Obviously, not even starter level. So many of those things that they do. Maybe I'm a curling guy.
That's what Jack said. Jack said he'd go curling.
They have curling facilities. There's one in Charlotte. I think there's one in the upstate. I was talking to some people about trying it out.
I think Elijah said there's a popular one in Nashville now, apparently. So maybe is curling becoming the new axe throwing? Axe throwing was the popular thing a couple years ago. Can we get a curling place in Columbia?
Columbia Curling Club?
That's CCC. There you go.
Yeah.
President CC Chris Clark.
Makes perfect sense.
Guys, though, Tyler, for your question moving forward, you know how I think you just need a little bit of a stipulation here.
Sure.
You can't say curling. That's people's default.
Okay. Fair enough. Yeah, I think just out of the oddness of the event and the feasibility of how
the physical feasibility of doing it,
quote unquote, easy it looks, I feel like that's going to be the answer for a lot of people. So yeah, if I ask the question going forward, I have to omit curling from that, I guess.
Yes,
I would do I would bobsled.
Okay, I went luge, but yeah, same kind of deal.
Luge. The single person luge. Yeah, I would do.
That's too much. You don't want somebody laying on top of you going down the ice chute.
90 miles an hour. Yeah, a little uncomfortable.
That has created some reactions, we'll say, online.
How do you discover you're good at that, by the way? That's my question.
Yeah, how do you even get into that? I guess you're probably, I don't know, they do it in cold weather places. Going luging. You start them out when they're 3 years old. A lot of kids. When'd you pick up soccer? I was 5. When'd you pick up the 2-man luge? How do you even get started in that? I don't know.
That's a fantastic question. We're going to talk some Gamecock baseball a little bit later on the hour. Stuart Lake going to join us, of course, part of the broadcast team alongside Derek Scott for Gamecock baseball. Tomorrow we'll be out at Village Eady, by the way, previewing all that as well. Yes, Wes?
I got to poll Chris on this too because he's in my era of childhood.
Okay.
So, Chris, did you watch Cool Runnings as a kid?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is it a classic for you, or it's just like, yeah, I watched it once?
You know,
Oh my God! Never mind. All right, cut him off.
It's not one of those like I've seen it. It's not one of those classics that like I've gone back to, over and over. It was not like a heavy rotation item. I am ashamed of it.
Really?
It's not something that you've like made like, hey kids, we're gonna watch Cool Runnings type thing.
That's right.
Okay,
That's right.
fair enough. I feel like I saw
I'm
it
sorry,
as a
Wes.
kid.
I've disappointed you.
I'll have to revisit it. I'm familiar with it, but I can't sit here and definitively say yes or no if I've watched it or not.
Firehouse Subs text line. Somebody out there tell me that is in my demographic in terms of age that was one of your favorite movies as a 90s kid.
803-404-6100. We'll see if anybody is in Wes's corner with Cool Runnings. We'll hit that a little bit later on in the show. Again, Gamecock baseball conversation coming up with Stuart Lake at 11:30. Of course, you guys had to talk about it yesterday. The news with Devontae Miles and being arrested on Tuesday. We don't know any further details at this point in time. As of now, still currently on the team. I imagine that his time at Gamecock football will probably end up coming to an end. Being where you're at in the calendar right now, you don't have to make that decision immediately. Still got a couple more weeks. Spring practice can kind of let things play out a little bit, but I think if we all had to guess, you're probably not going to have Devontae Miles in your defensive line room this upcoming fall, given the situation that occurred.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't have any details on it yet. Typically, you'll see coaches maybe let the process play out to an extent. I will say this, what is alleged to have happened, the version that is out there, from the police report, certainly does not look like some good decisions were made. So definitely disappointing there, and, we'll see where it goes from here, Chris.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to speculate. Certainly the nature of what was I guess we do need to fairly say alleged in the reporting about what happened. The nature of it is, more serious than just getting pulled over, getting an expired tag and or a suspended license or, something like that, right? It's a little bit more of a serious nature. I do think you have to remember too, that while details didn't really come out, Devontae Miles was one of the, 3 guys, Wes, that was out for the Oklahoma game last year, And so, you look at this thing and you go, okay, not only is it, a little bit more serious, at least on the surface, but you've also got, is there a little bit of a history here? And so we'll see where things go. But certainly I think you have to start thinking about and planning for the idea that you may be without him. And that would make sense if that ends up happening. Devontae, just in terms of what it means for the roster, he is a guy that played some last season, transferred in from Bowling Green. What kind of role is he going to play this year? I think that's, kind of an open question. You've got Gabriel Brownlow-Nindy back, who's expected to be maybe your top guy there. You've got Tomiwa coming in as a transfer, who I think has a really, really good shot to be a starter. You got Troy Pikes, who came in last year as a transfer and kind of came on as the season went. You're certainly looking for him to take a step up. You got Jordan Thomas coming in as a transfer who will be a first-year player. You got 2 freshmen. You got 2 redshirt freshmen. And so
you got Kelby Collins.
Yeah, you got Kelby Collins, who will be coming in as yep, you're right. I was looking at our scholarship rate. Kelby Collins is going to be a defensive tackle for you. So you're actually, if your transfer guys hit, as in Tomiwa ends up doing what you think he can do as a 5th-year player in college football, if Kelby Collins can take another step, if Jordan Thomas can give you something, and then if GBD and Pikes can be what you think, and you can get something from maybe, say 1 or 2 of these redshirt freshmen, you could actually end up being in a pretty good spot. Maybe it ends up being similar to last year where you're going in and kind of, remember, guys, we were all talking about it didn't play out this way in reality, but defensive tackle, one of the biggest question marks on the team last year, ended up being a pretty solid spot. Maybe that ends up being the case here, but, you obviously do want bodies, capable bodies in there at defensive tackle, so this would be a depth hit. I wonder, Wes, if this thing plays out to where Miles isn't on the team anymore, again, we don't know that sitting here right now. Is this a spot where South Carolina looks at the grad transfer market for another body, someone who can come in and give you a little bit of additional depth, some experience? We do know that South Carolina is keeping an eye after the summer on some potential grad transfers. Does this, kind of raise the stakes of wanting to bring in another guy there?
Yeah, potentially. I think, guys, it's one of those things too where if you stay healthy for the most part, I know you're not going to be able to say like, hey, everybody stayed healthy, but if you stay healthy for the most part, you're probably fine there. I looked at, I kind of looked at Miles maybe being in the running to be the fifth guy in that room, basically, and even then you're having to beat out a Jordan Thomas. Can you beat out the redshirt freshman? Did one of these true freshmen, find 10 snaps a game or something like that? I kind of go back and forth because here's the thing. Kind of a truism for football, like you never can have too many big men, right? Like you can never have too many defensive tackles. You can never have too many offensive linemen. Like that's just always true. So you don't want to start ticking away at that depth already at this point. Would it be just a massive loss to your roster? I think fair to say no.
Again, that's the news of this week. And again, we don't have to have any decisions made right now with spring practice, a couple weeks away, and obviously a long time until the season finally gets here. We'll see what ends up playing out with Devontae Miles. And I'll echo the sentiment I said at the beginning of the 9 o'clock hour, because, again, I wasn't here to talk about this yesterday. You hope for the best for him going forward. Again, we don't know what the legal process is going to play out and what kind of penalties and potential maybe jail time he's facing with this. But, you want everybody to be successful. You're rooting for everybody, whether it's on the football field or in life. And hopefully this is a situation that if he needs an ability to turn things around and be better going forward, he can learn from this and, not run into these kind of issues again. So, again, you want to see people be successful, and hopefully this isn't something that derails his life ultimately at the, end of the day. So we'll see what plays out there, but we'll stay on top of that in reference to Devontae Miles. Kirk Herbstreit spoke on the Crane & Company podcast the other day about Lenora Sellers and expressed disappointment in its 2025. We'll dive into that coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on your Thursday on the Game.
All right, guys, like they just said, Game TV powered by our friends at Integrated Media, integratedmediainc.com, and 803-948-8327. Now, if you go to integratedmediainc.com, what you're going to see is a great example of some of the many services they provided to people around the Midlands in their homes. They've been to my home. They've been to Chris's. Let them come to yours as well. And honestly, there's just a wide array of various things they can do to upgrade just your home experience when it comes to your TV, when it comes to your listening, or even the security and the cameras at your house. That may be very, very simple. Like you want to hang a TV, make it look more professional. Maybe you want to take that next step, maybe introduce some surround sound, or maybe you've got that extra room or the man cave that you just want to take to the completely other level of like a home theater system or a sports viewing exhibit. Whatever that is for you, hit them up today, integratedmediainc.com.
I'm like you. I went into last year and I thought this guy is going to have a monster year. He had played well and played through some injuries the year before. I was part of probably the hype train. I thought this guy is, I think I got enough weapons around him for him to have a really solid year. I think I didn't, because they kind of got off the radar pretty quickly. And I really felt, if you look at Florida and South Carolina, both of those quarterbacks kind of did much worse than I think all of us expected. I really thought we were going to see some big years from both of them coming out of the SEC.
Welcome back in. It's the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West and Chris with you on your Thursday here on the game. That the voice of Kirk Herbstreit on the Crane and Company podcast the other day, expressing how he viewed the season of both Lenore Sellers, and he would go on to mention DJ Lagway at Florida last year as two of the quarterbacks he was maybe kind of disappointed in the most in, considering what the expectations and hype were, going into last year. And I think most people, when you looked at the polls and the expectations heading into 2025, most people would say, hey, Sellers and Lagway to an extent as well were among the best quarterbacks in the SEC in terms of what we'd seen out of them so far, what their upside was. And I've seen either one of those guys lived up to it. Now, Lagway's continuing his career at Baylor, but here comes Lenore Sellers with an opportunity at redemption in his third and possibly final season as a starter here at South Carolina. And when you look at what's been done in the offseason to make changes around him, offensive coordinator, offensive line, changed up the running back room, hopefully those are obviously all the pieces to make sure 26 is better than 25 was.
Yeah, and I think what Herbstreit said is, it's fair. There were very high expectations for Lenore, so I'm sure he had very high expectations for himself. And, the production for various reasons just was not there. I think if you really dive in, there were still at times some big improvements from Lenore Sellers in terms of specific parts of his game. Now, just the overall, the explosiveness, the big plays, the just, frankly, putting up a bunch of touchdowns, whether that's throwing or running, the numbers just were not there this past season. And the numbers weren't there, frankly, for the entire offense a lot of times. So I think, is some of that on 16? Of course. Is all of that on 16? Of course not. And there's a reason South Carolina, I put it like this, there's a reason they made a change at OC. There's a reason they made a change in terms of O-line coach. And, I think the fact of the matter is Kendall Briles has built all of his offenses around his quarterback skill sets. And I know every OC, for the most part, says that in their opening press conference. It's a great soundbite. It's something you just say if you're a coach. But I do think, Chris, that we have actual real-life college football examples of Kendall Briles going to multiple places, instantly improving the offense, and building the scheme based on not just what the scheme always has been, but around what fits the skill set of that quarterback that he's inherited.
Yeah, every offensive coordinator, when they get up in a press conference, they're going to say, we're going to build our offense around, we have a system, right? But most of them are generally going to, I shouldn't say every, but most of them are going to say, yeah, we're going to build our team around what the quarterback can do the best, right? But in practice, do all of them do that? Not always. And look, I think if you look at what South Carolina did last year, and it was so multifaceted, right? Because you had run game struggles, you had pass protection struggles, if you can name an issue on this offense, they had it last year, whether it was consistently or in spurts, that they had all those issues. And so that makes it tough, right? But Kendall Briles, you look at him, look at Arkansas, KJ Jefferson, very unique quarterback talent. Remember how much buzz he had as a player at Arkansas. A lot of that was because, KJ Jefferson deserves a lot of the credit, but the way that they used him and deployed him in the offense, him and Rocket Sanders back there in 2022, they were pretty darn tough to stop. Then you look at Kendall Briles, he gets to TCU. All of his TCU offenses weren't quite the same. And you look at Josh Hoover, put up huge passing statistics. He's not as mobile as a KJ Jefferson or a Lenore Sellers, putting up big passing numbers, right? If you go back to Baylor, I mean, everybody remembers it always gets talked about the bowl game against UNC where they rushed for 7 million yards. Didn't even have a quarterback going into that game, right? I will just play a receiver. So he does have a track record of A, improving the offenses, like you said, Wes, but B, he also does have a track record of being able to take, okay, what is my quarterback situation? Now let's lean into this and figure out exactly what this guy does well. And what do we know about Lenore Sellers with what he does well? Well, we know he is an elite runner. He has elite escapability. One thing that Kendall Briles is going to be tasked with is helping him to realize when the play is over and walking that line between turning a play that looks over into a 20-yard run or a touchdown run, which Sellers can do, or let's get this ball thrown away. It's definitely over, right? And there's a fine line and a balance, and you're going to take some of that good and some of that bad with a player like Lenore Sellers. We also know he's an elite deep ball thrower, right? When South Carolina did have success offensively last year, it was typically on explosive plays. Deep balls to Nick Carver. I mean, we saw deep balls to other guys. We saw that a lot. So, you know, that is one of the more fascinating things is just how does Kendall Briles structure this offense and how does he get Sellers back, not just to the form he was in the back half of 2024, but how does he, you know, help him take that next step? Because the ability is obviously there.
Yeah, if y'all let me put my football nerd hat on for a second, I'm fascinated to see which version of the Briles offense do we get, you know, or do we get something completely new? I think obviously there's some things in their QB run game that he's going to, I would guess, borrow from what he did at Arkansas that I think will certainly be a factor. But do we see much of, I'm sure we'll see it some, but how much do we see of the true, like, what people would call like the veer and shoot, what I call like the super spread, which is kind of what Tennessee has used a lot of under Heupel, where you're truly having those outside receivers are like sideline to sideline. And, you know, you're introducing tempo. You're kind of simplifying the reads. I think there's a lot that Sellers does. Throw in the idea of spreading, you know, guys from sideline to sideline and having Nick Harbor's speed as one of those guys on the far outside stretching a defense. A lot of times, if you're going to run RPO off of that, it sometimes gets teams out of zone defenses because the spaces you're trying to cover are just so vast. Well, so if you say, all right, well, we have to play man coverage, what did teams ultimately get away from playing against Lenore Sellers late in his first year as starter, and certainly a bunch last year? They got out of man coverage. They said, we're going to play zone, and we're going to put all eyes on 16. We're going to say we're not going to let him beat us with his legs. If you can force teams out of playing zone and back into man, maybe you're going to reintroduce some of those Sellers long runs off of scramble plays that we saw him have so much success with 2 seasons ago.
We certainly hope to see a lot of that this fall. Again, a pivotal year for Lenore Sellers and the South Carolina program. Also a pivotal spring for Gamecock baseball as they get set to start their season tomorrow, taking on Northern Kentucky. Again, we're going to be out tomorrow morning at Village Idiot out there at Olympia at the Mills, getting you set for Gamecock baseball. And on the other side, we'll talk to Stuart Lake from the Gamecock baseball broadcasting team about what he expects for this upcoming season. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on The Game. Welcome back in. Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler, West, and Chris along with you here on your Thursday on the game. Just a little over 24 hours away from Gamecock baseball getting rolling for the 2026 campaign. And joining us now on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines, part of the Gamecock baseball radio broadcast team, is our guy Stuart Lake. Coach, appreciate you joining us as always. Hopefully the offseason treated you well, and I know you're as excited as anybody to get the season rolling tomorrow.
Yeah, great off season, ready to just get this team going, and gosh, feels like the day, like baseball weather a little bit here. Maybe we can keep this sunshine.
I was going to say, I got worried with the snow that came in the past couple weeks. We might have to deal with that on opening weekend, but it looks like outside of Sunday, it's going to be okay, which of course is why they rearranged everything for the doubleheader tomorrow. But we'll just kind of jump right into it here. We've been talking a lot about this team the past couple weeks, and we kind of end every segment with, but we don't really know because they're so much different from a year ago. They have one of the lowest percentages of returning players from last year. They flipped this roster completely over. Guys coming in from all over at pitcher, obviously in your starting nine, out in the field as well. What's your assessment of what this team is and what they can be this season?
Well, I agree with you. When you start thinking only 9 guys were in that room in August that had been in that room the previous season. So it's a brand new team in regards to that of just learning everything. And I think the coaching staff has done a great job of trying to bring this team together. I'm fortunate to be around them a lot and to get to see things. And I know this team has worked hard to unite. And it really did hurt with Jake McCoy because Jake, besides being, quote, your number one pitcher, he was such a leader on the team, and I think that's such important that he keeps stressing, I'm still going to be here. He's already had his surgery. His rehab's already started. Jake's in that building as much as he was going to be. Unfortunately, we just won't get to enjoy him on the mound. So from a pitching staff-wise, definitely the velo, you go to games or scrimmages, you see it. There's going to be a lot harder throwers. The big thing's going to be strike, get in the zone. Let's see if that can happen. I think Riley Goodman, Amp Phillips, Brandon Stone, I feel like all 3 of those guys are going to give you really good starts this weekend. I'm just excited, and I always am a hitting guy, to see what this offense turns into because there's so many different pieces in it, from left-handed hitters, switch hitters, things you can do now as an offense.
Coach, appreciate you hopping on. Great to hear your voice. It's Wes. Let's talk about Riley Goodman a little bit. I think maybe there was some buzz about this kid coming into the season, and I think there was maybe a thought of, okay, you can ease him in a little bit, but then the injuries you just talked about took place, and it's like, all right, kid, here's the ball. Let's go see what you got. So what can you tell Gamecock fans about just the stuff I keep hearing about that a young Riley Goodman has on the mound?
Well, I recruited high school a lot back when I was at Ole Miss. Christian Brothers High School in Memphis, just guys come out of there were always so ready to play. It was a huge get for a Gamecock program when you were able to get him to come here to begin with. Then he had the arm surgery. You're going to see a guy, and a lot of times they'll say you have the look. He will walk out there tomorrow. If you're sitting in that other dugout, you're sitting in the crowd, he looks like what a Friday SEC pitcher is supposed to look like. And that's what's exciting for me. When it all was going to shake out, and it always does, he was going to be somewhere in this top 3 on the staff. Of course, if Jake was healthy, Jake would have been getting the ball tomorrow. But God had a different plan, and Riley Goodman, to me, is going to be an exciting guy to watch get in there. Hopefully, I would guess a pitch count somewhere around 75 tomorrow. He's a strikeout guy at times, so he might not get the amount of innings you want out of those 75 because he's going to get some strikeouts.
Stuart, it's Chris. Another pitching question for you. One of the guys that I feel like is going to be pretty integral this season is Josh Gunther, right? Who was thought to be, hey, maybe this is a weekend starting type guy, but instead it looks like Coach Maneri's going to deploy him as a Swiss Army knife type. Had a really good preseason, maybe the most impressive preseason of any pitcher. I think he had 13 strikeouts, just 2 walks over a little over 9 innings. What have you seen from him, and how do you envision him factoring in not just this weekend, but the throughout the season?
Well, what I like about Josh is what you said. He can be that using different roles, but he might be a guy that could come in and close the game in the 7th. we always talk about the save. Who's going to be that guy in the ninth? Well, you might save the game in the seventh inning. He might be a guy that comes in and finishes a game with 3 innings because he has the starter ability, the mindset to where he can do deep pitch counts. And then he has the stuff that can be really hard on hitters that only get one at bat against. So I think he could be the key this weekend. We're obviously all going to be looking at starters, see how they pitch. But I think Josh Gunther could be a real big key to how this team starts to set up if he's able to get some of those longer end-of-game outings to really help us get some wins.
Hey, Stuart, I know you like to talk hitting, like you said. There's a lot of options, but in terms of, like, newcomers, is there a guy or two that kind of, that old-school thought people will just say, man, the ball just comes off the bat different for him. It just sounds different. It just looks different. Is there a guy or two that you're standing out there and you just sort of identified, like, I'm kind of excited about that kid?
Well, it's an older team, and that's what the transfer portal now. I hear y'all talk every day about it, and you start to get guys that, used to be JUCO guys. That's what we've built so much around here. But I really like what this lineup can be. Tyler Bach at the top, that left-handed hitter. Y'all have heard me talk so much. You have to have left-handed hitters in the SEC to succeed offensively because they can neutralize these power right-handed pitchers that most of the teams, including us, are going to have because fastball slider. When you start thinking you got Bach, you got Hollins who can switch hit, and you look over, I kind of created my bench guys. You got Hoover, who I think is going to be a guy. This is just my old dumb coach in me. It sounds different, as you said, when I'm watching him hit. And he's a guy that really hasn't been mentioned a ton in starting. I think he gives you a guy on the bench, a left-handed hitter. But, KJ Scobie, got to hit, got to have him in there. Evans is a kid I've watched his whole career from Florence Darlington back into high school. He's going to bring some stuff. Harmon, and then I haven't really listened much, but Craddock, when that guy's feeling healthy, he's a guy that's going to be in the mix, I think, before this whole thing's over. So I tell Monty all the time, I like this offense. I like the fact that you've got, and I did my numbers yesterday, you got possibly 6, 7 when you count Hollins, left-handed hitters that you can mix in a lineup, whether you start them or you bring them in as pinch hitters. And we haven't had that in a few years here.
Again, talking to Stuart Lake on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines ahead of opening day tomorrow. For Gamecock baseball, you mentioned Tyler Bach there, who we don't have the official starting 9 for tomorrow. He is projected to be your leadoff hitter playing that center field spot, and it kind of got lost in the shuffle of last year being such a struggle, but you had a very efficient leadoff hitter in Nathan Hall transferring over from Clemson, and that is such a value on any team, especially one that needs to be good, and Tyler Bach's going to be, I'm assuming, taking on that role this upcoming year, and based on the returns we've seen out of the offseason so far, sounds pretty positive on him being able to potentially fill those shoes pretty well.
I think so, too. And you're right. The first part of the year, you keep looking back at stats. So, Nathan Hall last year, 322 on base percentage of 397. He quietly probably had one of the best transfer seasons we've had here in the last couple of years of a guy coming in to do it, and obviously not going on to pro baseball to chase that dream. But I do think we've got guys that can come in. I'm not saying they're going to have those numbers, but I do feel good about some of the hitters they've brought in.
Stuart, let's talk a little bit about another returning veteran, and that's Talmadge LeCroy. Obviously, he hasn't had the types of seasons production-wise that he's wanted to, even though some of the off seasons he's generated some buzz. But this is a guy that's played a lot of ball. You look back at 2023, he had a really good season that coincided with a really good South Carolina season where they, came up just short of making it to Omaha. What have you seen or heard maybe that gives you some thought that maybe he could put things together once again heading into his final year?
Well, Talmadge is my last guy. When you think of how you recruit guys and connected, he's the last guy left that I had a hand in. But I played college with his dad, Jody, and I've said this a lot on the radio. He's just a baseball family of what they do. We really, years ago, were bringing him here to be more of a utility guy. He played shortstop in high school. We knew he could play third. We knew he could catch. I never had envisioned he would turn into the catcher. And this year, I feel he's going to have to catch. And I told him this one day, you got to catch like 40 games. This to be a team. You're the oldest guy. You're the veteran guy. I can tell how comfortable the pitchers are with him in scrimmages. So I do think a lot of our success on the mound is going to correlate with how Talmadge is doing behind the plate. And I think he physically has set himself up to have a very successful year. I was with him yesterday. He's feeling good. He's moving around, and that's exciting for me because I really want to see him have a great senior year.
Coach, last about 60 seconds or so here. What can you tell us about this Northern Kentucky team coming in here this weekend?
Well, they're in the Horizon League, and the Horizon League years ago was really good. They've lost some members. I think they're down to only 5 members in that league. So we were joking yesterday, they got a 20% chance of being in a regional. So this might be a regional team at the end of the year. Their coach feels good about their squad. If you look at the schedule and coaching, he's got South Carolina and Florida State for 2 weekends on that schedule. So he felt pretty good even in years past when you're doing your scheduling. But they're a whole new team, too. I have to go on to all kind of websites to find stats on their weekend starters. And the doubleheader, always hard on the team that has to do it. It kind of favors the team that's coming in to play 2 tomorrow. The South Carolinas, they got to really mentally be ready to go after it because it's 2 full 9-inning games. There's no short games, nothing involved in that. But you're going to see a Northern Kentucky team that's going to really come in here. They're lifting weights and practicing the night, so they're coming in with a lot of energy, and this is a great opportunity for them for a resume.
Well, Coach, we're certainly looking forward to all of it, and hopefully it's a funner season than last year, so our conversations weekly could be more enjoyable. Have a good call not only this weekend but this season, and we'll be talking to you here soon.
Well, I look forward to it, and I want to have a fun season for me and Derek can laugh a little bit too, but I look forward to talking to y'all weekly.
Absolutely. Appreciate it there. Coach Stuart Lake there on the AAA Heating and Air phone lines. And again, tomorrow morning we'll be out there at Village Idiot Pizza over there at Olympia at the Mills, getting you set for Gamecock baseball from 9 until 12:45, taking you right up to pregame for game number 1. And again, it's a doubleheader. Sunday got moved to later tomorrow, so game number 2 will be around 5 o'clock. Or roughly 45 minutes after game number 1 is over. And again, we're going to preview everything coming up tomorrow morning as well. But we'll come back. We'll wrap up the hour. Who's on Wes's side when it comes to Cool Runnings? Got a lot of texts that have come in about it. That's coming up next. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs here on the game. All right, welcome back in. It is the Gamecock Central Takeover Hour presented by Firehouse Subs. Tyler West, Chris, along with you, wrapping up the hour here on your Thursday on the game. Again, another reminder tomorrow morning out at Village Idiot at Olympia at the Mills, a short walk away from Founders Park. So if you're going over there for Gamecock baseball, come by, hang out with us, grab some pizza, grab some drinks, and get ready for the start of the season. Again, I believe they open up at 11 o'clock, so we'll be there a couple hours before first pitch, and we'll take you right up to pregame coverage starting at about 12:45 tomorrow right here on 107.5 The Game. The beginning of the show, Wes mentioned the movie, or really at the end of last hour, carried over the top of the hour. Wes mentioned the movie Cool Runnings that he has a strong affinity for. And, Wes, you'll be glad to know there's a lot of people in your corner.
Okay.
Joey says, I'm 38 and still watch Cool Runnings. My 5-year-old twin girls love it.
Let's go, Joey. Let's go.
See, Nameless Texter says, I'm 39. I always enjoyed Cool Runnings, that and Mighty Ducks. Maybe it's the age range here because you guys are all kind of around the same age. So maybe, because what year did that come out?
93.
93, so you would have been how old then?
Depending on when it came out, about 7.
Okay, so that was like prime time, because it was a Disney movie, right?
I think it was a Disney style movie. I guess Disney made it.
So yeah, childhood that comes out. I feel like maybe that's kind of the age range where this is really striking the nostalgia nerve for a lot of people, it seems like.
Yeah, shout out Nameless Texter and Joey. Appreciate y'all having.
Those are just a couple of examples, but
appreciate you guys having my back.
You have a lot of people in your corner.
Fantastic. And I will say Mighty Ducks.
Oh, of course.
Right there with it. And I don't even like hockey, but there was something about the Mighty Ducks that just did it.
You're not, and I imagine the same thing with Cool Runnings. Again, I have to refresh myself on that. You're not watching it for the sport itself. You're watching it for the story and the characters. Like, you don't tune into Mighty Ducks just because you love hockey. You love the story and the characters within Mighty Ducks.
Yeah, and the Jamaican bobsled team with Yul Brenner and who was the other? Sanka, I believe. Tyler's shaking his head. Yes, he has no idea who I'm talking about.
Again, if I saw it a long time ago.
Just a fantastic movie, guys. It seriously, if you have kids that are like, I don't know, in that age range, 5 to 10 years old, go for it. Trust me. Great movie.
You've inspired me. I'm gonna kids sit down. We're watching Cool Runnings. We'll see. I don't know. I don't have a feel yet for. It's unpredictable. 50-50 as to whether or not my girls will like it.
Tell them that Uncle Wes said.
I will. Yes.
5 out of 5 stars.
Now
I'll be like, I'll let you go play with Wes's dog again if you.
There you go.
If you watch this movie, you have to get through the whole thing.
Is an Uncle Wes endorsement enough to make them want to watch it?
I have no idea. I was just saying it.
We're gonna find out. The dog is definitely a nice little, carrot to dangle.
You know what? Now that I think about it, I feel like there's almost a Disney movie for a lot of these Olympic winter sports. You have Cool Runnings for bobsled. You have Mighty Ducks for hockey. Ice Princess if you want to get into, ice skating. What was the other one?
Air Bud. I'm just kidding.
Yeah. Is snowboarding snowboarding still in the Winter Olympics?
Of course.
You have Johnny Kapahala back on board if you want to get into that.
Tyler, you asked us if we were locked in. You are not locked into the Winter Olympics if you don't know if snowboarding is
I
the thing.
just wanted to make sure they take events on and off all the time, so I wanted to make sure I was correct when I was saying that.
So
because I have not seen it yet in these Olympics, so I wanted to make sure it was still.
I believe there's some snowboarding today, actually.
Okay,
from what I saw on the schedule.
I got U.S. men's hockey locked in for 3:10 today.
Excellent.
And I'll check in the other things going on around that too.
Excellent. Proud of you.
By the way, y'all, last night another sport, not Winter Olympics, but last night I was checking out the Unrivaled one-on-one tournament.
Okay.
Very interesting. Yeah, women's so a bunch of WNBA players. Fascinating matchup coming in round 2. It's going to be, I think, on Friday. I think tomorrow. Check your schedule. Aaliyah Boston, Breanna Stewart.
Ooh,
that should be a good one. Round 2 seems like that could be a final.
Now, where can we watch this?
I cannot remember the network it was on. It's on the tube.
Okay.
Shout out to YouTube. I'll give YouTube TV a free endorsement. They, that's what I use. And so, you're up at the top on your typically, for you kind of thing, and pops up Unrivaled one-on-one. I'm like, I've watched the 3-on-3 some. Let me check this out. We were watching that last night. I think Alicia Gray's in there too.
Okay.
So yeah, Leah Boston, Brianna Stewart. It was pretty entertaining, actually.
Yeah.
Well, one-on-one basketball.
Sounds pretty good. Now, the WNBA is still in the midst of their CBA negotiations. They got to figure that out so we can see these women actually play other basketball this year. But in the meantime, that's all we can get from them right now.
Yeah, it was pretty good stuff. First time watching I've seen the 3-on-3. 1-on-1 hadn't watched.
Yeah.
Pretty entertaining. Got to take it back behind the 3-point line. There's a person on each side that stands there that you have to pass the ball to.
Okay.
Like, to give it back to. It's fascinating, the whole thing.
It's driveway basketball is what it is.
Yeah, it is.
Yeah, very cool. Yeah, so yeah, if you want to check that out, head to YouTube and find that as well. Again, tomorrow morning we'll be out there at Village Idiot Pizza from 9 until 12:45, getting set for all things Gamecock baseball. We'll also talk some Gamecock women's basketball as they get set to take on LSU Saturday night in a huge top 6 matchup as well. Coming up next, halftime show, myself and Bill Gunner as your Thursday rolls along here on the game.